in terms of like reevaluating any of the beliefs that are part of this constellation.
Okay, so here's the breakdown of this fucking mealy-mouthed, methamphetamine-induced tirade.
Andrew Wilson roasts woke Destiny for his incoherent arguments in this clip, as Andrew Wilson reacts to Destiny debating Jordan Peterson and Rex's arguments as he goes through them one by one and strips away all of Destiny's bullshit. Let's watch and react.
What Destiny's trying to get across here, and he could do it in seconds, is that people sometimes have incoherent political beliefs. Because if they don't start with a baseline ideology and stack up from there, they end up having incoherent, problems inside of their belief structure. I know that summary wasn't nearly as good. And then the Jenga, and what about the Jenga? We got to do the Jenga of political belief and the constellations in the political belief. You have to understand that sometimes they don't match up in the proper way, and I would think that they would have a proper epistemic foundation as we were moving the Jenga pieces up into the constellation of stars, and my mouth keeps on doing this, and it's
Now, the signal for released entropy, which would be a consequence of, say, violated fundamental beliefs, is a radical increase in anxiety, right? And a decrease in the possibility of positive emotion. And so people will struggle very hard against that, which is exactly the phenomena that you're describing.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with what you said. Although,
so here's my
so I'm not sure why it's relevant to the issue I was pursuing.
I'm getting.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Here's my issue. Okay, so when I'm trying to evaluate a situation, I like to think that I have I've got some insulation from the effects of what liberals think or what conservatives think, is because on my platform, I don't necessarily have an allegiance to a particular political ideology. Like right now, I'm like center left to progressive, but I break really hard from progressive on certain issues. I think Kyle Rittenhouse is in the right. I think basically everything you guys are doing with indigenous people is insane, including the complete mass grave hoax. I think that I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I have beliefs where I can break from my side, pretty hardcore because I am not like allegiant to a certain political ideology.
So, for one thing, nobody is completely unbiased. It's nonsense. Anybody who tells you that they aren't, or that their worldview is not informed by some particular set of beliefs, in this case for Destiny, it would essentially be degeneracy. That would be one of the informants of his belief. He can break away from political issues external to degeneracy, like the Second Amendment, which has very little to do with it, and break ranks. It doesn't hurt his neoliberal ideology. But no, he's as biased as they come. It just depends on what it is you're asking him about. But his worldview, his grounded worldview, his actual epistemology is that he's a moral nihilist. He kind of larps as a utilitarian, but he's a moral fucking nihilist, dude.
One thing that worries me with this constellation of beliefs thing is that sometimes when it comes to evaluating a particular policy or a particular problem, I feel like it's part of the constellation, and sometimes it inhibits people from like taking a step back and reasonably thinking about the issue. So when we're talking about climate change, you mentioned the WEF sacrificing tons of people, the UN, global elites, 5 times energy costs in Germany, genocidal people. I feel like this is part of like a whole thing where it's like, okay, well, let's take a quick step back and let's just like think rationally about this particular issue for one moment. Okay.
Well, you asked me what the motivation for anti-poor policies might be, so that's why I was trying to flesh that out.
But I got all of those things before I even asked that question. Because I think it's totally possible that somebody might say, okay, well, when you put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it seems to cause an increase in surface temperatures. This has been happening.
I just want to let you guys know out there, for you aspiring debate bros, I'll do this myself even, right? There is a good way to navigate sometimes these conversations where you don't want to firm up a position or say something as being particularly true, even as you're saying it's true. And that's with the word seems. There is a political philosophy out there. It's just a philosophy, but is being utilized more and more in the political sphere, called phenomenal conservatism. Has nothing to do with conservatism at all. What phenomenal conservatism is based around is what are called seemings. Something seems this way, you act as though it is this way until proof of the alternative is demonstrated to you. Now, that's a Reader's Digest version. But you'll see in almost all of Destiny's exchanges, and then you'll see it from Not So Erudite, you'll see it from many of these people. They say the word seems a lot because it doesn't marry them to a position. Instead, what it does is it gives them a way to slip out by saying, well, I just, it seemed that way. I'm not saying it is, it just seems to be. But the person external who's watching thinks that you are affirming that position. It's a snaky tactic, one to watch out for.
From about
Andrew Wilson, I think, has done a good job so far in analyzing Destiny's basically argument structure, but I would add one thing to that also. He is right about seams, but that is something that if you look on the left, a lot of these liberals, Destiny, David Pacman, Brian Tyler Cohen, I mean, you can go through the whole host of them. A lot of them use vague terminology. They use vague language because a lot of their arguments aren't really grounded on anything. There isn't really a sub foundation structure to a lot of their beliefs. It's like this malleable liberal quasi bubble that they just draw from whenever they want to. But they're always firm to go after other people's points when they take a moral or grounded foundation. Oh, this is wrong or that's wrong. But yeah, they use this vague language. A lot of this also comes from communist thinking. You don't want to marry yourself to any individual position because then someone can use your same tactics on you and go after you for your position. But if you never actually take a very firm stance, a firm grounding, a firm footing on your position, then it allows you to use scapegoat tactics to get around. With David Pacman, you see a lot of this stuff. The same thing, the same slimy tactics. And this is what a lot of the left, in my opinion, has adopted over the years. And that's why it's infuriating to watch people like David Pacman, Destiny, and others use these tactics because they're wrong. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people who aren't as wise to it, like Andrew Wilson, don't know how to debate them in order to pin them on their BS tactics. But let me know what you think about that and leave a like. Let's get back in.
The 1800s, and as we started to track surface temperatures, whether the thermometer is on top of the Empire State Building or in the middle of a field, it seems like there's an average.
It seems like there's. Why can't it just be there is a blank? Why does it seem that way?
Rise in temperatures, and people all around the world are observing this. In some places more than others. If you live in Seattle,
stop them when they do that. Actually stop them and make them firm up the positions. One of the reasons these people hate me, because I'll do this to them all the time, right? It just drives them fucking crazy. I'll stop them in the conversation right there. I'll say, wait, stop. Is it that way or does it seem like it's that way? And they lose their fucking minds. They lose their mind. They don't even know what to say.
And 20 years ago, your apartment building wasn't built with air conditioner units. You feel that now. If you live in a place in London and you've never had an air conditioner before, now that's not acceptable. I think that people on the ground can see that there are changes. And I think that scientists, when they look in labs, can see changes. It might be that some models aren't precise enough. And it might be that for reasons we don't even understand
well, the
now,
economic models certainly aren't precise enough.
Sure, maybe that might be true.
Maybe. They can't even use them to predict the price of a single stock for 6 months. The economic models are not sufficiently accurate to calculate out the consequences of climate change over a century.
And
not in the least.
I like the comparison because economic models can't predict individual stocks, but they do predict the rough rise of the market. If you invest in the S&P 500,
now notice here he's saying something that he is sure about, or he thinks he's sure about. So he doesn't say it seems like they do. He says they do, right? You can really mess these people up really bad if you stop them mid-conversation and say, does it seem that way or is it that way? And you just kind of watch them. They'll spurg out about it because nobody ever does it.
On cataclysmic collapse.
Nope. Even with the cataclysmic collapse accounted for, you're going to see about 7% returns on average with inflation over long periods of time.
I wouldn't call an average a very sophisticated model analogous to climate change.
That's the difference between climate and weather, though. Right? Is that climate isn't going to tell you what the temperature is on a given day, but it might tell you the average surface temperature over a period of 1 year or 10 years. And then that's the difference between climate and weather. That's the difference between like the market and the stock.
Difference.
It is a hypothetical, but again, we're seeing more and more and more data. every single year that things are getting hotter and hotter. So,
let's jump out of our cloud of presuppositions for a minute.
Sure.
Now, one of the things that...
Or no, wait. Before we do that, actually, because I don't want to say, there are some things that we've gotten as a result of investing in green energy that have been good. So, for instance, the power of solar energy has dropped dramatically in the United States, faster than anybody thought possible.
Yeah, but nobody uses that shit still. It's true. It has dropped in price because the government has invested tons and tons of money into it. But most people don't use that shit. Think about this, right? Most of you out there right now. You don't know anybody using solar energy for basically any fucking thing. Okay? You don't know. They're not using it for nothing. Nothing. You know, or they have one solar panel on the roof or something. You know what I mean?
That solar energy is like competitive or beating fossil fuels in certain areas. As long as you can set the solar panels up, you're literally beating fossil fuels.
And as long as the sun is shining.
Yeah.
Well, it still is. We're not a nuclear winter yet.
But it isn't when it's...
Yeah, but we're not a nuclear winter. No, but there are places where the sun doesn't shine that often. Gary Newman sends in $5, says the combined pharmaceutical potency in that room. It's like looking at the past, arguing with the future. Well,
yeah, I think Andrew Wilson also makes another good point whenever Destiny brings up solar. I mean, let me know in the comments, folks, but where I live, I see a handful of places that have solar panels at best. It is not widely used. Andrew Wilson is right. The price has come down, a lot. But guess what? No one really uses it. Why? Because solar doesn't replace coal. It doesn't replace nuclear. It can't produce the same amount of any energy anywhere near it. There are only certain places in the entire world where it's truly, truly cost effective to use them. The desert, Sahara, Arizona, Southern California, Nevada, places like this that get a lot of sun. Other places that have invested in this, like Germany, which don't get a lot of sun, are, they're just destroying their own economy. I mean, if you ask me, this entire green tech revolution has been one gigantic fraud to bleed money out of private capital and put it into these woke industries that aren't really going to work the way that they're really going to work. But I think it's ridiculous to even bring up solar as really a fix to any of this. It's, some little thing that you can add on to, but it's not going to supplement nuclear or anywhere close to that. But I thought Andrew Wilson did a great job of pointing out Destiny's BS arguments and tactics in this clip. So let me know what you thought about what Andrew Wilson had to say about Destiny and his argument style, and what Destiny had to say about green tech as well, because we all know it's pretty much kind of a life drain. Thanks for watching, folks. Take care, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.